Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
How is this trifle? I'm doing you a favor here. Lisa deliberately faked an event just so she could stay a little longer in his room. Meanwhile, Jessie had left her room. Though they had agreed to meet at 2:30 p.m., she still wanted to show up a little earlier. In her hands were 2 cups of freshly ground coffee she eagerly wanted to share with him. Just as Jessie wanted to knock on the door, it opened from inside, startling her. The next second, she found Julian answering the door with another woman. Being an old trooper, Lisa acted practically seamlessly the second she saw Jessie at the door, pretending to have blacked out as she held her forehead and fell limply into Julian's arms. As Julian failed to react in time, Lisa successfully hugged him after turning around. Jessie, on the other hand, quickly realized she had interrupted them. Awkwardly, she said to Julian, "I'll come back later." "Jessie." Julian called out to the young woman, but she still shrewdly returned to her room while her mind was filled with images of Lisa hugging Julian. Lisa was the female lead in Julian's last production and also an A-lister. Her looks and performance were considered the best. Meanwhile, Lexi was sorting Jessie's clothes out when the latter returned. I thought you left to see young Master Julian for a read-through." "How come you're back?" she asked with surprise. He's in the middle of something else." Jessie sat somewhat absent-mindedly on the couch. "Lexi, you're a sucker for celebrity gossip. Do you know of any past dating rumors between young Master Julian and Lisa Powers?" Jessie asked with curiosity, to which Lexi pondered for a moment before answering. "If my memory didn't fail me, there was. But it was debunked very quickly." "What's the story?" "Don't quote me on this, but Lisa had gone into young Master Julian's neighborhood in the middle of the night and only left 2 hours later." The next second, Lexi covered her mouth. "No, wait. Hold on. I think I've gotten it wrong. That never happened." Knowing Lexi like the back of her hand, Jessie remarked, "If it happened, it happened. No need to hide it from me." "Okay. There was word about it, but it was deleted pretty quickly, only suckers for gossip like me saw it. Then again, it doesn't mean anything is going on between Lisa and young Master Julian, right? Lisa was in his room just now." "What?" Lexi's gossip mode turned on instantly. "What were they doing?" Jessie hadn't even had the chance to relate what she saw when someone knocked on her door. With that, Lexi answered it. "Hi, young Master Julian." She beamed when she saw who it was behind the door. "Is Jessie inside?" "Yeah." "Tell her to come to my room," he ordered before waiting outside. Meanwhile, Lexi looked over at the young actress on the couch. "Jessie, young Master Julian asked you to go to his room." At that, Jessie got up with the 2 cups of coffee in her hand. "You're done with your business?" she asked reflexively after coming out to find Julian still standing by his door. "Yeah, come on in." Julian pushed his door open and entered right away with Jessie following behind him. At that moment, Lisa had already left. "Have a seat first. I'm going to get changed." He had an innate psychological cleanliness disorder toward women, and he had grown uncomfortable when Lisa threw herself into his arms, causing her thick perfume to be caught in his shirt. Jessie then sat down like a good girl. Suddenly, something sparkly on the couch caught her eye, and she picked it up to find it was an earring. "Is this Lisa's? How could she have dropped it?" Jessie couldn't help imagining what had gone down. Could they have possibly made out on the couch just now? Only when a man cups her face and ruffles her hair can the earring drop by accident, no? At that, the dating rumor Lexi mentioned popped into her mind. Lisa stayed in his neighborhood for 2 hours. What could they have done during that time? She had seen far too many set couples in this industry, and getting into a romantic relationship during filming was even more common than she'd like to admit. Witnessing so many of these scenarios, she was bound to overthink. Can Julian and Lisa also be in this kind of relationship? That's why they'd make out as soon as they meet up, which ended up in the earring being dropped on the couch in the process, right? While Jessie was deep in her thoughts, an alluring male voice traveled to her ears. "Is the coffee for me?" Yes. "I got it for you," she answered at once after being pulled back to reality. "Oh, I found this. You should return it to Miss Powers later." With that, she showed him the earring in her hand. Julian furrowed his brows in response. "Where did you find it?" "On the couch." "It's Miss Powers, I assume," she answered with a smile. "Just throw it into the trash can," he ordered. "Is he not going to return it?" "It looks pretty expensive." "Are you not going to return it to her?" Jessie asked with surprise. Julian, for one, saw through Lisa's act right away. So, even if the earring was hers, she had dropped it here on purpose. Obviously, she wanted to use the excuse of finding her earring to get close to him again. "Leave it on the table then. I'll have my assistant return it to her." "Returning it to Lisa will save her from having to come up with another excuse to find me again." Miss Powers looked a little unwell earlier. "Is she all right?" Jessie asked. "She's alive and kicking," he answered. She had run away so quickly that she didn't see Lisa leaving in discomfiture under his sub-zero gaze. "Let's get down to the read-through." At that, he took out 2 scripts and handed one to her. Jessie didn't chit-chat anymore either and started reading the first page, for it was a flashback scene. The lines were of the female lead expressing her love for the male lead as she stood leaning in his arms by the lotus pool. The male lead's name was Alia, while the female lead was Estelle. "Why aren't you reading?" Julian looked up to find her gawking at the script in her hands. Jessie wasn't an actor, so it was only natural for her to be nervous when she was reading her lines in front of Julian for the first time. Cough. "I don't care if you're a king or the ruler of the world. I love you. There's never a day that I don't, and the universe can prove it. Even if I'll be damned forever, I will still love you." Jessie blushed after she was done reading the line, and she dared not even look at the man across from her. Meanwhile, Julian riveted his alluring gaze on her. "Not enough emotions." Again. She choked in response. "But aren't they just doing voiceovers? Cooper wants to use our original voices this time. So, you better be prepared." The revelation rendered Jessie stupefied for a few seconds before she regained her senses. "Our original voices? But my voice doesn't even sound good." Her insecurity was acting up again. To that, Julian smiled. "I think it's pretty good. But I'll stutter. I'll slur when I'm nervous. I worry things will get awkward." Jessie bit her lip and lowered her head. Yes, she wanted to act, and she threw herself into the industry as well. However, it was only after joining showbiz that she realized she was still incompetent. She was even thinking of chickening out now. He put his script down. He knew that she was thinking of backing out, and he couldn't help worrying this girl would just drop and bail. That said, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He had dragged her into showbiz in hopes of acting alongside her in the first place. "Are you going to disappoint me, Jessie Silverstein?" He sat down graciously on the couch. His black dress shirt made him look like a lofty black swan. Startled, Jessie looked up at the man across from her. It was as if there was a powerful energy influencing her, ruthlessly casting her insecurity away, and pulling her back from chickening out. "No, I can't disappoint him. Never. Leave now if you don't want to act. I'll sort the rest out." If you want to act, then prove what you have it takes to me. At that moment, Julian seemed unforgiving and somewhat heartless even. She was so used to Julian's gentleness that his sternness made her feel inexplicably aggrieved all of a sudden. In fact, her eyes began to turn misty. However, she obstinately pursed her lips tight and forced her tears back. At that, she nodded. I want to act. I'll definitely get it right. You feel stressed when you act alongside me. Go and do it with your assistant instead, urged Julian, asking her to leave. Jessie left right away, as she would really cry out of grievance if she stayed a second longer. It was honestly absolutely grieving to be told off suddenly when she had been enjoying his gentleness for quite some time. Lexi happened to be out when she returned to her room, so she headed to the balcony for some fresh air. After taking a few deep breaths and wiping the tears from the corner of her eyes away, she gave herself a pep talk. You're going to act, Jessie Silverstein, and you're going to do it right. Do not disappoint him. It was as though disappointing him was a sin. Meanwhile, in a different hotel room, Lisa was watching the clock run on the couch while musing, surely, Julian would have seen my earring by now. When is he going to call and have me go and get it? Right, I'm going to give him another 10 minutes. If he still doesn't call, I'll go get it myself. I'll tell him it's an expensive piece and he can't lose it. While she pondered, she had her makeup artist touch up her makeup. Just then, a knock came at the door. Her assistant answered it only to find it was a middle-aged woman. This is the earring Miss Powers dropped in young Master Julian's room. I'm here to return it, the latter said to the assistant, who took it with bafflement. Lisa heard the middle-aged woman too, and her expression immediately turned ugly. Seeing so, her assistant returned the earring to her gingerly. Miss Lisa, young Master Julian had someone return it. I know. As if I needed her to return it. I should have been the one going to him, me. Lisa fumed before slumping onto the couch, spent. Wait, wasn't Silverstein at the door when I left? That bitch must be in Julian's room right now, isn't she? Jessie had already gotten social media raving about her when she got cast as a stunt double and stole her role. Not only that, the internet was filled with comments about how an A-lister like Lisa was defeated by a mere stunt double, making her fans disappointed in her. The publicity Jessie had garnered lately had already made Lisa hate her, and now that she saw Jessie flirting with Julian with her own eyes, the aversion deepened. You think a nobody with no background like you can fight me? Humph, you're as good as dead meat. Lisa snorted disdainfully as animosity flashed across her eyes. Accidents that ruin an actor's career would inevitably happen in a crew every now and then. As expected, back in Jessie's room, Jessie didn't feel stressed at all when she acted in front of Lexi. What was more, her ability to memorize a script increased significantly, and the way she read through the script was super laid back and natural. Even Lexi gushed about her talent for acting, and it brought some confidence back to Jessie. Jessie didn't go down for dinner that night, but had Lexi get some of her favorite takeaways. Of course, these delectable couldn't be found in a hotel but on the streets. Tacos, mac and cheese, elotes, and grilled skewers were Jessie and Lexi's scrumptious dinner for the night. But lo and behold, the doorbell rang mid-eating. At that, Lexi checked the peephole while munching on a grilled lamb skewer only to cry out in panic, Jessie, quick, tidy up. It's young Master Julian. Jessie, too, panicked. He can't see me eating these things. With that, she hurriedly packed the food and hid everything in the cabinet under the television before wiping the table clean. Meanwhile, Lexi gobbled down the skewers, chucked the stick into the trash can aside, and wiped her lips clean before answering the door. Outside, Julian waited for some time before someone finally opened the door. However, a whiff of grilled skewers traveled from Lexi when she answered the door, and it made him scrunch his nose reflexively and glance at her. Lexi's heart skipped a beat in response. As she felt that Julian Gilmore despised her, her face flushed. Damn, it doesn't feel good. At that, Julian entered the room. Although the table was spotless, the air in the room still made him frown. An obvious aroma that came uniquely from grilling food over charcoal still filled the space. What brings you here? Jessie couldn't help being conscience-stricken. Julian stared judgingly grim at a certain someone for some time before finally asking, why the silence? I've just eaten grilled skewers, Jessie answered honestly in the end. And who gave you permission to eat that kind of thing? Julian condemned, startling Jessie. She immediately stood straight and drooped her head like a misbehaved child. She didn't even know what to do with her hands. You're not allowed to eat this sort of unhygienic food with zero nutrition again, and don't even think about eating covertly. Julian fumed, then suddenly turned to Lexi. And you, don't get them for her. Also frightened, Lexi tucked her neck and vowed at once, I will never do that again. At that, he turned his head toward Jessie and commanded, go and brush your teeth. Jessie blinked in response. The man didn't express any disdain or the sort, but she felt that she had been scorned beyond redemption. Julian, on the other hand, stormed off after that, probably unable to stand the stench of grilled skewers in the space any longer. When Jessie heard the door close, she came out, still brushing her teeth, and exchanged a glance with Lexi, still feeling somewhat fearful. Goodness me. Oh, my heart. Did you see young Master Julian's face? That was freaking scary. He looked so pissed off that I thought he was going to strangle me. Yeah. What's he so upset about? I've only eaten skewers, haven't I? Not even my mom and dad would lecture me in such a way. Jessie brushed her teeth in frustration. It's a good sign, Jessie. The angrier young Master Julian is, the more it means he cares about you. Think about it. It isn't his body, so what's the point of him getting so upset? It's definitely because he cares about you. Oh, Lexi felt it very clearly just now. Jessie blinked and retorted with an enigmatic emotion. Everything is only in your head. One more thing. You're going to act alongside him. You guys have kissing scenes. He must hope that you don't eat anything with a strong smell. After all, you two will. At that, Lexi pursed her lips at Jessie. You two are going to do this. Jessie's face flushed crimson in response, and she brushed her teeth even harder. By the time she came back out, Lexi had finished the remaining food. Young Master Julian is concerned about you, not me. So, I'm finishing it all, she sniggered. Alas, Jessie could only satisfy her craving by smelling the aroma in the air and watching Lexi eat. But for some reason, she couldn't help wanting to chuckle at Julian's grumpy face. She realized Julian was no longer as gentle as he was back in Averna and instead was even more temperamental and stern. Though still feeling hungry, she was officially banned from eating the rest of her dinner, so Jessie could only starve for the rest of the night. Then, just as she was deciding to make noodles, the doorbell rang. She answered it this time around and found Julian's assistant carrying a takeout bag. This is the dinner young Master Julian ordered for you, Miss Silverstein. Jessie's inner self tumbled with joy at that. Please tell him I said thanks, she said as she took the bag from the assistant. Lexi had coincidentally come out of the shower. You've ordered another round of takeaway, she asked curiously when she saw Jessie carrying a takeout bag. It's not me. Young Master Julian got it for me. Join me. Aren't they all takeout? What's the difference? Lexi mumbled as she sat down and watched Jessie open the bag to reveal an exquisite set of containers. Even though they were plastic as well, they looked premium. The bowl itself cost about $50 in the market. Whoa! Fancy! Lexi exclaimed. Even Jessie was stumped. She never expected Julian to order her such a fine dinner. Of course, since it was for her, Jessie would certainly help herself to the food, for she was genuinely famished. That said, she couldn't possibly finish it all. So, she asked Lexi to help her out. The poor girl then made more room in her stuffed belly and helped herself to seconds. "Hey, Jess. I know this restaurant. I heard that their minimum charge is one that we commoners won't dare to spend." Jessie, too, knew which restaurant Lexi was talking about after checking the logo on the bag, and she felt warm and fuzzy on the inside. Who knew if it had to do with the soup or just herself? Later, she spent nearly all night studying the script, memorizing as she went. As she had a pretty good memory, she managed to memorize every single word despite the large chunk of text. More than that, even her emotions had become richer. As she had overeaten earlier, she couldn't fall asleep. So, she couldn't help checking out the crime movie Julian and Lisa starred in, which was a summer hit last year. It was a movie with only one leading male character, Julian's character. He played an undercover cop, and his acting was commendable. He embodied a ruthless bad guy as perfectly as he portrayed a just cop. Lisa, on the other hand, played a tragic character in search of her fiancé. As the character was layer-filled in addition to working with Julian, she managed to bag the Best Supporting Actress last year. Later, the movie arrived at an intimate scene, Julian and Lisa hugging and kissing in the rain. Jessie knew well that Julian's stunt double had stepped in for the scene, but the two of them looked nearly identical from various angles. Not only that, they shared the same figure, and her chest felt stuffy as she watched the scene unfold. After the movie ended, she climbed into her bed and fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. When morning came, she received notice that the crew had finished setting up the scene, and they would officially begin filming the following morning. When Jessie and Lexi headed down for breakfast, they bumped into Lisa and her assistant, unfortunately enough. At that, Lisa sized up Jessie up close, scanning the latter critically from head to toe, looking like she wanted to pick out a flaw. However, the longer she looked, the better she could see how special the young woman Julian favored so much. She had a small oval face and delicate facial features. Not only could she hold the grace of a great woman, but she also gave people a fresh and crisp impression of a girl next door. Nonetheless, what made Lisa jealous most was her flawless, baby-like skin. It was the type she could rarely find, a cool undertone. Coupled with her big, gorgeous eyes, she had a charming glow to her. Be it in detail or as a whole, the young woman was a sight to behold. As the elevator descended, Lisa shot a hinting gaze at her assistant through the elevator mirror, which the assistant got immediately. Lexi got out as soon as the elevator door opened. Jessie followed right after her, but Lisa's assistant tripped her the second she took a step, causing her to fall forward. Fortunately, Lexi was standing right in front, so she did not give the floor a morning kiss. Lexi had also turned around and caught her in the meantime. "You all right, Jessie?" "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do it." Lisa's assistant apologized pretentiously at once. Jessie could tell whether she had done it intentionally or not, and she took a gander at Lisa, who walked out of the elevator with crossed arms and a contemptuous gaze. Meanwhile, Lexi turned to the assistant. "Be careful next time." "Huh, you sure are assertive for a mere assistant." Lisa snorted disdainfully. "Let's go." Jessie tugged on Lexi. "Jessie Silverstein, isn't it? So, you're Julian's new partner? I heard you used to be a stunt double. I have to hand it to you for climbing to this spot. It must have been tiring." Lisa deliberately stressed the word implicitly. Jessie had wanted to just leave and not stoop to the woman's level, but after hearing her words, she turned around. "Please mind your language, Miss Powers." "What? You dare to do it but can't stand other people criticizing you for it?" Lisa raised her chin condescendingly. I've been in this industry long enough to know there are only ever a few tricks simple stunt doubles like you can use to climb to stardom. Yeah? Well, Jessie won't stoop to that level. She's far too pure for that. Lexi retorted. Care to share how you get to where you are now, then? You and I are barely acquainted, let alone friends. So why should I tell you? Jessie monotoned, taking Lisa aback. As if you're worthy enough to be my friend, Silverstein. Huh, it's Jessie who doesn't want to befriend you. To think a person can be so shameless. Lexi fired back again, causing Lisa to turn grimly and glare at her. Don't get cocky, Silverstein. The higher you go, the harder you fall. With that, she left smugly. When Jessie stared at Lisa's retreating figure, she didn't sense the animosity from the latter but instead reflected on her incompetence. The reason Lisa dared to mock her right now, as she stood here, was that she wasn't good enough yet. In this industry, only after one had enough creditable work and fans and was hardworking and aspirant enough could one ignore other people's derision. You all right, Jessie? Don't let her get to you. Lexi comforted her. I'm good. She can't get to me, she will only motivate me. At that, she hooked her arm around Lexi's. Come on, let's go. Help me with the script after breakfast. I want to memorize it as quickly as possible. All right. When you become successful, just stand in front of her. I guarantee you'll be able to piss her off without a word. Lexi declared. The noblest way to slap someone in the face was to surpass them. The following morning came in the blink of an eye, and it was the commencement of the shoot. Jessie's makeup was perfect as she stood in front of the camera for the first time. She strolled across a flowery field under the green screen while the fan blew at her, causing her long hair to flutter gracefully. The character she was currently playing was a young celestial servant snatching a moment of leisure. Cut. The cameras stopped rolling following Vincent's cue, and Jessie looked somewhat nervously in the director's direction as she stood by the field. That was great, Jessie, but can we do a couple more shots? Try and express it through different emotions. You're a carefree young celestial servant, and your greatest pleasure is to steal a sip of your master's liquor. At that, Jessie acted the scene again, and sure enough, the sensation was more intense than the first shot. Though many members of the crew surrounded her, being a stunt double for years had helped her develop her composure. Julian didn't have any scenes for the day, so he didn't show up on set. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he knew his presence would intangibly add to Jessie's stress. So, he decided not to show up altogether. Sure enough, Jessie was wholly cheerful when Julian wasn't on set. She had become acquainted with the crew and also acted alongside a few old troopers naturally and with ease. Vincent had been pretty nervous that day, but after seeing how well Jessie had done in the first scene and that it was exactly what he was looking for, he was elated. In fact, she was super telegenic and the embodiment of Estelle. The thing about Vincent's directing was that he preferred to keep things simple with no added effects and whatnot. Thus, his movies always had a sense of reality, as if the audience was there with the characters. Julian was in the hotel when he received Vincent's video recording of Jessie's acting. The young woman in the recording was dressed in a fantasy costume, and her two dangling headpieces made her look like an adorable, otherworldly, naive girl who was full of hope for life. Jessie had captured the character perfectly. I knew she had it in her, praised Julian as he chuckled. The filming continued until the evening. As they wanted to release it by mid-year, the shoot was pretty rushed. Although Jessie felt a little overwhelmed by the quick pace, she had already thrown herself into the character. You have wire stunts in the afternoon, Jessie. You think you're going to be okay? Vincent asked, to which Jessie nodded with reassurance. Absolutely. This is my forte. Her answer pleased him, for he didn't like his actors to use stunt doubles. At around 2:00 p.m. at the hotel, Julian could no longer sit still after learning about the wire stunts arranged in the afternoon from the crew, so he had his assistant ready the car to head to the set. He was dressed in all black and even wore a baseball cap as he didn't want to garner attention. He was just there to see how the girl was doing and also to make sure she was safe during her wire stunt. Because of the wire stunt, Jessie didn't dare overeat. In the past, she would even do them with an empty stomach as she would be more awake and more agile. Anything could happen on set, and sure enough, the wire stunt was brought forward as they were missing one of the props for the next scene. Jessie stood below the crane in her costume while the stunt crew helped secure her to the mechanism. Vincent, too, came to check on the situation and ensured her safety. After everything was set to go, Vincent gave her some words of encouragement, then cleared the set for filming. The scene was about Estelle picking a magical herb, and she was magically light as a feather. It would be a visual delight, but such a scene challenged an actor's movements in the air and also the steadiness when they landed. Meanwhile, Julian had arrived, and he was standing behind the crew, who were watching the filming process. His heart was in his mouth when he saw a certain someone hanging mid-air. Is she not afraid at all? He subconsciously clenched his fists as he glued his gaze to Jessie, who floated in the air like she felt nothing. Then, following Vincent's cue, Jessie flew across the camera ethereally. It looked as though even the wind was working with her, making it seem like her hair was acting along with her under the high-definition camera. The young woman didn't appear the slightest bit nervous as she chased after the prop. She tiptoed lightly across the floor and suddenly leaped, stepping on a green screen-covered prop to once again chase after the prop until she landed gracefully on the ground. If it weren't for the visible wire, everyone would have thought Jessie actually flew. Her figure was absolutely perfect, and her movements were incredibly light and agile. No wonder she had a place in the stunt double community. She was absolutely perfect. Aside, a certain someone heaved a sigh of relief and finally relaxed after watching her land. She sure is full of surprises. Meanwhile, Vincent was personally checking every footage they had just shot from the director's monitor, and by the end of it, he gave her a thumbs up. Great job, Jessie. That was wonderful. Jessie had just unhooked herself from the mechanism when she received Vincent's praise, and she beamed like a child getting candy. As she smiled, a fathomless gaze entered her vision. Joy instantly turned into surprise and ran toward Julian while lifting her dress. For a moment, Al laced his gaze as Jessie in her costume made him think he was in a mythical world and a bubbly elf was running to him. Jessie didn't notice the pipe protecting the wires below her feet when she was about a few feet away from him, and she tripped. Ah, she cried out and flung herself into Julian's arms like a fluttering butterfly. Julian, too, caught her nearly instantly, and the faint perfume and the tender, slender waist made him didn't want to let go of her. Jessie, however, left his embrace in a panic, looking as though she feared offending him. Sorry, I didn't hurt you, did I? She checked his condition at once. No, he shook his head with a chuckle. You did great. It's all right. Jessie smiled, and suddenly, a growl traveled in the air. Someone's stomach was growling. The young woman immediately covered her stomach with mortification. Her stomach was reminding her of her skipped lunch. What's wrong? Did you not take lunch? Julian asked with a frown. I try not to eat too much when I have wire stunts. Just then, Lexi rushed over with a cup. Jessie didn't eat at all. All she had was water. Tell her that it's unacceptable. At that, Julian turned to his assistant. Get her something to eat. I can still manage a little while longer. I have another scene soon. Jessie stopped them at once. Never act with an empty stomach. Your health is more important. I'll notify Vincent, he said gravely before heading toward Vincent. Jessie, on the other hand, was still processing what was going on. She was long used to not eating regularly, so it really wasn't a big deal. "Jessie, look at how nice young Master Julian treats you." Jessie felt pretty touched by his gesture as well. Sure enough, Vincent gave her a half-an-hour break, and Julian took her to the green room while his assistant brought some snacks and fruits over. As Jessie didn't remove any of her makeup, she ate daintily. Meanwhile, Julian, who sat across from her, admired the view. It was like watching an elf eat. With every bite she took, her lashes fluttered, and her moist lips were tempting him to savor her. At that, Julian picked his phone up and pretended to scroll it, but only the heavens knew he was doing so to cover his gulps. And who would have thought Julian Gilmore, the chaste award-winning actor, would one day face such a challenge? After a half-an-hour break, Jessie resumed her work and only called it a day at 9 at night. After returning to the hotel, Jessie didn't want to move at all as soon as she touched the bed. Just like that, she video-chatted with her mother in bed, and she felt warm and fuzzy after hearing her mother's concerning words. Later at 10, Jessie received the filming schedule for the next day, and she couldn't help feeling somewhat nervous, for she would be acting alongside Julian. What was more, the supporting actress would be arriving too. She played a demoness who worked for Alioth. The character was described as stunning and flirtatious, and because she had a crush on Alioth, she did everything possible just to have him. The supporting actress was Hazel Lestrange, an A-lister as well. It was said that although her acting was admirable, she was super lofty. It was her first time working with Julian as well. It was just that because her schedule was packed, she didn't show up during the first day of the shoot but only now. Jessie had already begun doing her makeup in the makeup trailer early in the morning, and just then, a sexily dressed woman entered. After sitting down, she took a gander at Jessie, then pulled her phone out to video chat a friend. Jessie, on the other hand, had wanted to say hi, but the woman didn't give her a chance at all, only sharing her journey with her friend. She didn't stop either when the makeup artist was doing her makeup. In fact, she deliberately revealed her whereabouts, the bags she bought, and how much she had spent during the call. Even an idiot could tell she was bragging. However, because no one dared cross her, everyone in the space was forced to hear her brag. At last, she ended the call and only then turned to Jessie. "This is our first time working together, Miss Silverstein. I have a tight schedule, so I hope we can get our shots done in one take." At that, Jessie nodded with a smile. "I also hope the filming will run smoothly. I heard the contract you signed in Stardom is an A-listers, but looks to me your acting doesn't deserve such a handsome fee, no?" Hazel smiled implicitly. Jessie hadn't come up with a way to retort her when Julian entered the trailer as well. He was dressed in a black costume, and his tall figure exuded nobleness and aloofness, making him the embodiment of the king of hell. "My, you're ravishing, Julian," praised Hazel sincerely as she did a 180 from her sarcastic attitude a second ago. Julian glanced at Jessie and walked up to her to look closely at her makeup. Jessie had lifted her head with her eyes closed so that the makeup artist could do her job. Once the makeup artist was done, Jessie opened her eyes, which looked as clear as spring water. However, no one seemed able to see through her by looking her in the eye. "Is it done?" Julian asked the makeup artist. "Yes." Jessie rose from the chair as she was already looking forward to the first scene with Julian. "We'll be going out now, Hazel." Jessie waved her hand at the woman. Hazel watched them leave through the mirror, a glint of jealousy flashing through her eyes. Presently, Jessie was standing in her designated spot. It was a scene in the mortal world where she and the injured demon lord had fallen into. Here, the female lead would take care of him. Following Vincent's order, Jessie acted according to the script by fearlessly dashing toward Julian just as he pressed his hand against his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Are you all right? Does it hurt? Why did you save me? Get lost. Don't touch me." Julian dismissed her and pushed her away before falling to one knee. He depicted a noble and proud demon lord, yet his eyes were filled with rage, struggle, and murderous intent. All of those emotions played out through his dark and charming gaze. On the side, Jessie was no longer in the frame. She watched Julian with admiration written all over her face, for the man's acting skills were on another level. "Get into the frame, Jessie," Vincent urged. Only then did Jessie realize it was her turn. She promptly rushed over and supported Julian's weight. "You're badly wounded, and your life is at stake. Stop acting tough and head somewhere else with me." Julian lifted his head and forcefully pushed her away. On the other hand, Jessie lost her balance and fell to the ground. The shock on her face was captured on the camera. "Get lost," he roared. She gritted her teeth. At this moment, she saw several celestial soldiers running after them. Without hesitation, she took Julian's arm and lugged him to the next spot. Julian was horribly injured at this point, so he groaned in pain as his facial features contorted. When they arrived at the designated spot, Jessie accidentally stepped on her long dress and fell with Julian. This wasn't in the script, but Vincent did not stop them. Everyone held their breath, and only the two of them were in the frame. Both Jessie and Julian were stunned for a while. It wasn't until 1 minute later that Vincent shouted, "Cut!" Jessie quickly got up from Julian, her face flushed. The man was seated on the floor while looking at the coy woman. "Did you do it intentionally?" Jessie protested in secret, thinking that she didn't do it intentionally. She had accidentally stepped on her dress and fallen over, that was all. "It was a good shot, Jessie." "We'll include that," Vincent announced while he was busy with something else. Jessie batted her eyes and exchanged glances with the man, who had already stood up. Julian flashed a charming smile at her. The fake blood on the corner of his mouth made him look like he was the embodiment of a demon lord. Meanwhile, Jessie couldn't help but think that all the costumes were indeed delicately made. Given Julian's 6-foot-tall figure, he looked genuinely handsome in black clothes, especially when he was tangled up in cables earlier. Since they were about to shoot the next scene soon, Jessie, Julian, and Hazel ran through a quick rehearsal. Hazel was Julian's subordinate in the movie. She had found the injured demon lord before the celestial soldiers did, but the moment she appeared, she tried to kill the young celestial servant beside him. The clothes she was swathed in were pretty revealing. After she completed the scene, she shuffled toward Julian while swaying her figure in an attempt to talk to him. Meanwhile, Julian's arms were crossed while he was surrounded by several crew members. There seemed to be a bubble around Julian that stopped anyone from getting too close to him. Wanting to show how unique she was, Hazel only talked to the most important crew members and gave the others the cold shoulder. Presently, Jessie was seated beside Lexi and drinking some tea to quench her thirst. Lexi asked, "Where's the supporting actor, Jessie?" Only then did Jessie realize she hadn't heard anything about the supporting actor after so many days. "Where is he?" "From what I read in the script, there's an important supporting actor that I'm supposed to be in love with, and his character's name is Atlas. However, I haven't heard anything about him." She couldn't help but pat the female staff member beside her as she asked in a small voice, "Who's the supporting actor?" "I just learned that the original actor resigned from his role." After that, Vincent found Fabian Walters to replace him. If everything goes well, he'll be on set in 2 days. Jessie and Lexi exchanged glances. They could hardly contain their urges to scream, for Fabian was an actor they admired. Oh, my gosh. 2 of the hottest actors are going to battle it out in the movie. I love it. You're so lucky, Jessie. You'll be surrounded by 2 hunks. In the past, Jessie would have laughed out loud with her, but now, she reckoned that she had to restrain herself. Having said that, she was pleased to be in the same movie as Fabian. While she was jolly, she caught sight of a pair of eyes staring at her. Julian was seated in a chair with the script in his hands. The two fans his assistant had placed beside him made his long wig flutter in the air. Meanwhile, his handsome facial features gave off an evil vibe. There was a reason the media praised him for being the most handsome actor in historical costumes, after all. Jessie gaped at him from a distance too. Both of them were clad in traditional costumes as they were surrounded by busy staff members. It was as though they had traveled through time and rekindled their love in an urban setting. "It's your turn, Jessie." "Let's go," Lexi reminded. Only then did Jessie realize the director was calling out to her, so she lifted the hem of her costume and rushed over. Hazel was already there. In the scene, she had to land on the ground while holding a long whip. After that, she searched everywhere for her master with an anxious expression. "Julian, Jessie, come over here and resume your earlier positions," Vincent said to them. Jessie started blushing again, and it seemed that it was unnecessary to help her apply any rouge. On the other hand, Julian lay down on the meadow of beautiful flowers. His assistant was helping him to spread out his hem and comb his hair. "All right, Jessie. Get on top of Julian and press him down." Vincent squatted and teased them with a cheeky look. With that, Jessie lay on top of Julian while everyone watched. This was a challenging feat for her. "This isn't right. You have to be right on top of him," Vincent ordered. In an instant, Jessie's face turned a shade redder, and she hid her face in Julian's arms. As the staff members attempted to stifle their laughter, Julian let out a muffled laugh. He took the initiative to adjust Jessie's position so that her body could perfectly press against his. Vincent stopped pulling their leg as he said, "Jessie, pull yourself together. We'll start now." Their bodies were in close contact, so Jessie could still feel the man's firm chest even though they were wearing clothes. What's more, the smell exuding from his body was pleasant. As her head was resting on the man's chest, she lifted her chin and saw the man's face that was just inches away. From her angle, she admired the man's fine facial features. "All right, let's start." As the camera started rolling, Jessie had to appear panicky while lying on top of the demon lord. Images of the incidents she'd forgotten about flashed through her mind as she examined the man in shock. Meanwhile, Julian's gaze was conflicted. Even though he was in love with the young celestial servant's face, he had to appear furious and scornful. Just then, Hazel arrived and shouted, "Let go of the demon lord." As soon as she finished speaking, she wielded her long whip in an attempt to cast the young celestial servant away from the demon lord.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.